My name is Patrick Ray. I'm the founder and CEO of Canopy Boulder. We're the first business accelerator, and thus the leading, because I don't think there's another one in the industry yet, that's focused on the cannabis industry. But we focus only on ancillary products and services. Okay, so those are businesses that don't touch the plant, which is one way to assess an investor very early on, is to try to understand what's their appetite for investment, what are they looking to do, and for us, we're only interested in data, tech, software, media, hardware, grow tech, any business that's providing a framework for the industry, but businesses that touch the plant, growers, extractors, manufacturers of edible products, or MIPS as they're called in Colorado, and dispensaries, we're not interested, right? And there's a couple of reasons for that, and I think you'll hear that in my presentation. So without further ado, some of the topics that I'm going to try to cover, I'm going to move fast, and I'll say a little bit about everything. Again, if you have a question, want me to go deeper, stop me, raise your hand, and I can explain more. So these are some of the topics, some of the macro topics that are driving and impacting the industry, and the ones that I thought that were worth talking about. But let's first start out with how big is the industry. Right now, in the United States, 2014, the market was $2.7 billion in consumer sales, up 74% over the year prior. 2015, they're looking at about a $3.5 billion market, significant growth. But what we see is the growth and development of the national total market is dependent upon when and how states legalize, which is exactly what you might expect. So this data comes from the ArcView Market Research Report. It was the third edition of the State of Legal Marijuana Markets. It's a $495 report. I have a code for $100 off if you're interested in getting a nice little discount. Totally worth the money. You can totally go down the rabbit hole on almost every topic. Full disclosure, I was the executive editor on it. So I think it's a nice little piece of work, but there's a lot of information that can be valued there. You know, the market is booming, it's growing, but it's not without its challenges. And we did an analysis, when we were writing this report, we said, hey, if we could snap our fingers and take what's happening in Colorado to every state in the country, how big would the market be? And the figure that we came up after a pretty deep analysis was $37 billion. Okay? $37 billion. Now, let's put that in context. What does that mean? How big is the organic foods market? It's about $35 billion. Dietary supplements, about $38 billion. So you're looking at comparable, consumer-driven, under-regulated consumer markets of significant size, investment, attract a whole lot of interest from business people and investors. I think when we get there, it's going to be pretty intense. So legalization trends, I'm sure you're following obviously what's going on across the country, but state by state, the only thing that's consistent about the legalization trends that are occurring state by state is that there's a lot of lawyers making a lot of money on this business, and what we find is that most of the state regulatory frameworks end up being, they just want to be tougher than Colorado, right? Government, along with healthcare, universities, very conservative organizations, it's difficult to get them to say yes when they do. It's all got caveats, and what they're trying to do, we see with the regulators and legislators, they just don't want to repeat Colorado because it's been such a disaster, right? God knows why. So these are some of the trends. When I was doing this analysis, or I was looking at this research, what was really interesting to me was that how far we've come as an industry and as a movement. And there really are only 11 states in the country where there's not some form of law that legalizes cannabis in some form. So you have your states that are adult use, you have your states that are medical programs, and then you have in the South, and then in Utah as well, you have these cannabis oil laws, right? It's kind of like this fascinating, interesting thing that's occurring where you can't grow it in that state, you can't buy it or sell it, but you can possess it and use it, right? And it really is a reflection of one of the primary drivers of the legalization movement in the United States, which is sort of the mama bears, right? Who have children who have seizures or Dravet syndrome and are looking at a death sentence for their child. And they go to their legislators' offices and wait for a meeting. And they've had an incredible impact. and they're highlighted in the documentary Weed, right? So if you have any questions about that, which hopefully you're all very familiar with, a very powerful movement in helping change the laws around cannabis in the United States. California, one of the biggest opportunities. A couple weeks ago, maybe it was a month now, 3 bills were passed near the middle of the night. God bless America and its political system, that started the process for creating a medical marijuana regulatory framework in California that was statewide, because, excuse my French, but it's kind of a shit show out there right now. One city's doing something different than another one, and as a result, you have a lot of illegal businesses popping up that are unlicensed and unregulated. So what we've seen in California, or what we're going to see in California, is a real movement in the industry, in my opinion. I mean, that is a state with a population of 38 million people. It's the 8th largest economy in the world. As California goes, so does the rest of the United States, because it's just so darn big. And when we're working with our companies in the accelerator, we're making sure that they understand it's their job to make it to California legalization. Because if they can make it that long, they can survive the ups and downs of being startups, right? And the trials and tribulations. Who here has started a business before? Now, keep those hands up, keep them up, keep them up. Who here plans to launch a business in the cannabis industry? All right, you guys are all crazy. It's hard, it's really hard. If everybody was so easy, everybody would be doing it, right? There's some things about the cannabis industry that make it very, very difficult to do business. And besides looking to California, we also drive our startups and we call them the founders, the entrepreneurs, the founders of these companies, to plan out how they're going to make it to banking solution. What's going to happen whenever the banking solution is solved? And there's a lot of people trying to solve that problem with closed loop systems. You have an idea?
Yeah, no, question about your banking, because you said you only deal with ancillary companies.
Yeah.
How affected are they by banking regulations?
That's a great question. There's no real standards out there. There's no sort of playbook for a banker or compliance officer in dealing with cannabis. Banks are very conservative as well. They have no interest. Yeah, it's a $2.7 billion market, but that's like the profit of like Monsanto in half a day. Like, come on, it's like, it's not really big enough for them to have that much interest. And banks make money off of loans. They don't really make money off deposits, right? So to take a cannabis business that touches the plant for money, it's just not worth it for them. Not worth the risk, right? At the same time, with ancillary, it's still an issue. A lot of bankers and compliance officers, they just don't want to deal with it. Not on my watch. I don't know, business is good. Think about the general economy. It's pretty good right now. It has been for quite some time. So there's no incentive for them to bend the rules and try to allow you in and take a risk. What do they have to gain, right? But let me ask the question. When they fix the banking regulations for cannabis businesses, what do you expect will happen to the industry? Besides everyone having bank accounts.
More real investors will invest in it from the financial industry.
Definitely you'll see more investment because,
I think the security companies that are making a lot of money right now are going to take a big hit.
Yep. Yeah, there's a whole wrap of businesses that are probably going to be completely put out of business that exist right now when the banking problem is solved, the banking solution is found. But the one thing that no one's touched on that we expect to happen when the banking problem is solved is valuations will increase for all sorts of companies, because banks will then be able to, and people will be able to finance acquisitions and investments. It's like mortgages, right? Once mortgages came into existence, wow, home values really started to climb. You can start looking at that case study if you're interested and see how the valuations increased significantly when finance was available. Just enables more people to get into the market. Consumption trends, so somebody mentioned dabbing, dabs, wax, rakes, edibles, extracts, oils. I don't even know what they are. But there certainly is a movement towards preferable alternatives to smoking. in the market, right? And it's not uncommon. I mean, it's a consumer. If you just step away from the fact that it's cannabis, you say this is just a consumer product. You know, in most all consumer product categories, there's a drive towards innovation and creating that next evolution of the product. We're seeing it here. You know, if you take anything away from my presentation tonight, understand, one, that it's really hard to be a part of the cannabis industry. Two, it follows a lot of the same business and economic laws as any other industry, right? You know, if supply goes up and there's oversupply, prices are going to go down, right? And you know, keep those in mind. So consumption trends, definitely following like other product categories. And I mentioned supply going up and prices coming down. That's happening, right? So when we see states come online, usually we first see a shortage of supply and prices spike. It happened in Colorado, it happens in Washington. There's actually some really cool data now out there about the first couple weeks of sales in Washington versus Oregon versus Colorado. And it's kind of neat to see how the different states are developing, right? But one thing that's pretty consistent, prices spike. And then as more supply comes online, prices start to fall. And we're starting to see prices fall dramatically in Colorado, which I might argue is one of the more mature markets, and it's painful. It's hard for me to even say mature because it's still so young. But you know, what happens when prices go down is you see a lot of change in the market. And this chart here shows the average price of 1 ounce, and as it varies from the average across the country, right? So in Colorado, we are 24% below the state average. California, 25% below, 11.8% in Arizona, 33.6 below the average in Oregon. These are where markets are more developed. You're seeing the price decline. So that's something you need to model if you plan to go into the growing, any business that touches the plant. You need to make sure you're taking into consideration that the wholesale price is going to decline. Yes?
So you're not talking about the price to the consumer, because then there's taxes involved in the state's approval, correct?
The price declines are getting past the consumer. Prices are going down. This is the price per ounce, right? The wholesale prices are going down, which is driving the price per ounce down. Certainly seeing some stratification in the price in the product based on sort of craft cannabis versus sort of more mass-produced cannabis. But yeah, you also have taxes that are layered on those great taxes.
These are legal sales, not illegal sales?
This is, well, there's obviously states where it's not legal. So I think they've taken the average price of the market across the country and they've done that. So we talk a lot about fundraising and raising capital and, you know, how much capital do you need? How do you assess investors? I think that the most important capital in the industry is human capital. And I applaud you all for coming to the meeting here and with your curiosity and your interest. And if you have skills and you have expertise in certain areas, like I really encourage you to consider joining the industry in some shape or form. Now, if you're an investment banker or you're a finance person and you want to become a grower, that's fine. But if you're a finance person and an investment banker and you want to come in and help companies raise money, and you want to get into investing, that's great, right? Don't be afraid to bring your skill sets to the industry, because when we're looking at companies to bring into our accelerator, the first 3 criteria for selecting those companies is founder, founder, and founder. If you're low ego, hardworking, curious, right? You take direction well. And you're also not a sole founder, but you have a co-founding team. Those are big pluses. Because in our program, which is 13 weeks, it's almost impossible to do it by yourself. Our asks of our founders are ridiculous. You know, we had a guy in our spring class. He's a funny guy. Devin Kincannon. He started a company called Glass House Online Headshop. And he said, you know, I quit my job so I could get into this cannabis industry, work for myself. I was working, you know, 9 to 5, and now I'm working like 7 a.m. to midnight. What happened? I thought I was coming to the cannabis industry, we were gonna have a lot of fun. But he got a real skill set that he could bring to the table, which was search engine marketing and selling products online. Actually didn't work out for him. Didn't work out for him at all. What we found was that he had a harder time building a brand than sustaining and building on existing brands. So he'd worked for a lot of women's fashion lines, selling their products online, and he had a lot of success. He was like a known guy. He came over to the cannabis industry when he had to start a brand. He had no luck. So know your skill set, know where you can fit in to the industry, and come on over. The other thing that we're seeing in development in the industry is women in the cannabis industry, and we are enormously supportive of that. Women Grow, I saw they have events here. I think this next week. I encourage men and women to attend. There's a lot to be learned. It's a great place to connect and learn about the industry. In our spring class, now we're almost done with our fall class, which is our second class. Our spring class, we had 6 female co-founders, which was great, way above the averages for accelerators and investments and investing in businesses. In our fall class, we have 0, and it's not for not trying. To find people who are willing to take the leap and become CEO is difficult. To find women that are willing to take the leap and become CEO and start a business is also very difficult. And I encourage you to encourage more women to get involved in the industry because we want to create a different kind of industry. And we believe that very strongly. I hope you do too. And there are great resources through Women Grow, and we are very interested in female founders. Presidential elections, I guess, is the debate tonight in Boulder? Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Oh, in the decade, my gosh. And High New York. Multitasking. So the presidential election, there's been a lot of saber rattling. What I would try to remind people is that in the primary season, the presidential candidates play to their bases, and they go to the fringes, right? And then in the general election, they come back to the middle. So let's all not forget good history that those great politicians have taught us about their wavering positions, and understand that it's not the time to freak out, but there are people and candidates out there who are not interested in supporting the cannabis industry, and we need to make sure that we're supporting the candidates who are and voting with our dollars and donations. So I encourage you to get active there.
Who are those?
Who's that?
Who are those?
Which are the presidential candidates that are supporting the industry?
Who are supporting the industry?
Rand Paul is widely regarded as the most pro-cannabis presidential candidate.
What about Bernie Sanders? He just introduced a bill today to,
Bernie Sanders is another
to
one.
let the states set their own policies.
Yeah, Bernie and Rand, just go vote early, vote often, right? Yeah. So pretty interesting there. But what I would also say is that, did you ever, for the folks of us who've been around for a while, did you ever expect to have the presidential candidates be discussing their marijuana use in the debate? I mean, it really is a reflection on how far we've come as a country and as an industry. So investment trends. So in the cannabis industry, there's certainly opportunities for everyone to get involved as an investor. As a retail investor, you can buy penny stocks, or the stocks that are publicly traded. Most of them are penny stocks. That's been a tough road to hoe as an investor trying to make money. Seen a lot of volatility there, a lot of reverse mergers, pump and dump schemes. You got to really watch out for that stuff. But where the most activity has been is in private investment. High net worth individual investors supporting grows, dispensaries, edible companies, extraction companies, and ancillary products and services firms. Why are we not seeing more institutional money come into the industry? Well, one is that the economy's good, and there's a lot of places for people to put their money. The other thing is if you do a pivot, like into cannabis, let's say you've been in cybersecurity, you have to go out to your limited partners and sort of let them know. And when times are good and cybersecurity is a great place to invest, why are you changing your strategy? The other thing that gets in the way is often, and it's good for everyone to know here, because when you're trying to assess whether an investor is going to really come to the table and close with you, you need to make sure that they understand what's in their own operating agreements for their investment fund. There's a lot of boilerplate language that speaks to engaging in a federally illegal activities as an owner or director of a company, right? So it's good to ask the questions early to assess investors. And when I speak to our companies and we talk about how they're going to assess investors, it's okay to do your due diligence on your investor just as they are doing it on you. And I like to very quickly try to understand what their interest is. Are they wanting to invest in businesses that touch the plant, or ancillary products and services, or both? Have they made investments? How big? How many? What's their preferred deal size? What's their strategy? What do they want to be when they grow up as a cannabis industry investor, right? And are they a decision maker, or are they doing recon for someone else? So it's okay to ask those direct questions in a very nice way. It shows that you are working, you're trying to converse with them as an equal. I think, and that's a recommendation, right? Because you're giving them a great opportunity. It's not like you're begging them for money. You should never think that way. You're presenting them with a great opportunity to make a lot of money, right? And keep that in your head when you're talking with investors. Because it adds that confidence that you need when sometimes you don't really feel like you have it. Oh, the crime and social impacts. My guess is that I don't have to speak too much about this in this room, but in January 2014, when Colorado legalized, the sky didn't fall. Their crime by and large went down. I think the only drug-related arrests that went up were public consumption, because you had people from New York coming out, going to a dispensary, walking out, and lighting up on the street, and the cops were like, hey, it's actually not legal to smoke out in public, and you should make sure you do it in the safety of your home. Yes?
The same people that were behind the amendment were actually circulated an initiative to allow public consumption in bars. They dropped it and said they were going to negotiate with the Denver City Council. Do you know anything about what's going on with that?
I don't have a whole lot of behind the scenes information, but having been there and seen it, it initially got kind of a negative reaction. And I think sometimes it's hard not to move forward. And I think these groups, these people, the Marijuana Policy Project, Vicente Cedarberg, who are behind this initiative, they have a plan, right? They thought it out. They think about legalization every day, all day, and they have a plan. So they went to the Denver City Council and tried to say, hey, we're going to get signatures for a ballot initiative to make it such that in certain public places like bars, you can publicly consume. And it seems to be fair enough, right? But sometimes fair enough doesn't mean the right time, right? And I think it was just viewed as maybe a little aggressive, and that it's better to have a few more years of data and build a stronger coalition behind it before you bring it to the voters. And it's like, what I tell my companies who have boards, and how do you manage a board of directors, which is kind of the same thing. You want to get a positive result. You never want to go into a board meeting not knowing how it's going to end, right? So you need to do your work beforehand and make sure that your city council people are all supportive, that the Department of Health is on board, do your pre-work. And I think they were a little aggressive there. And they found that it wasn't going to pass, in their opinion, so they decided before, instead of putting it out to the voters and having it fail, which would be bad, they said, we're going to take it back and do a little work and work with people a little bit longer before we reintroduce it. Does that answer your question? But the crime and social impacts are immense. We know all about that. Again, what's really nice about legalization that occurs in Colorado and California and Arizona and Nevada and Washington, all the different forms, is that now we have really great real data. It's not fear-mongering and stigma, it's real data which shows us that's actually happening. And here's just a few data points. 84% drop in marijuana-related arrests, in 3% drop in deadly car accidents. Kind of interesting, huh?
Now, why would that be?
Why would that be? Well, that's the joke. What's the difference between a stoned driver and a drunk driver at a stop sign? Drunk driver drives right through the stop sign. Stone driver stops and waits until it turns green. That's for you, Alan. No, that's actually the first public speaking practice that we'll do at Canopy with our founders is we'll have them get up and tell marijuana jokes, because eventually you're going to have some sort of AV problem, and you got to have a couple in your back pocket to sort of work through the dead zone, right? So I've heard them all. They're great.
So what the answer is, why is 3% less?
Well,
We don't know.
I think that more people are consuming cannabis and drinking less. Yeah.
It is.
That's a gas, it's a
Yeah. But it's interesting, traffic fatalities across the country are up significantly. There was an article in the Journal about that maybe a couple months ago. And they theorized that the economy is good, more people are driving on the roads more, there's going to be more car deaths. But
People are using these when they're driving.
yeah, it might be the phones too, but you know, not Colorado, which is great, real data. And then the science, you know, there's a few things that really frustrate me in the cannabis industry, I think frustrate a lot of people. One of them is the banking problem, right? We can't put our money into banks if we run cannabis businesses, but we have to pay taxes. Where does that money go? Into banks. It's kind of like a little bit of a ridiculous situation. Same thing with science, right? There's not enough good science that was done in the United States on cannabis usage in people. But who controls the number of licenses or the number of licenses given to clinicians to do research? The DEA. Do they have any incentive? No. The less money that they have, the less enforcement that they have to do, the smaller their budgets are, and you know, budgets rule a lot of these issues. Banking, we talked about banking, super frustrating. I've actually spoken to, tried to open a couple accounts in Colorado where it is a healthy and vibrant and safe industry. And I've talked to bank managers, regional managers, and compliance officers when they've said, you know, we're not going to open an account for you because you're in the cannabis industry. And I said, well, you know, we're ancillary products and services. And they're like, well, you know, some of your businesses might be taking money from dispensaries or growers. That's cannabis cash. I'm like, well, following that logic, are you not accepting money from the electric company or the phone company? Because those businesses that are growing marijuana in that warehouse have a phone. And it's this goofiness that we deal with. There are businesses that do have bank accounts, right, that touch the plant, but they pay very high monthly fees.